The reason I'm bringing the term attitude into relief, a term never elaborated on by Spotnitz or his followers explicitly, is that I believe it is critically important in the treatment of preoedipal cases and therefore merits our careful attention. I also believe that attitude, and I'm referring to therapeutic attitude, is implicitly embedded in all of Spotnitz's clinical concepts that relate to the patient's need for ego insulation and protection, such as the contact function, joining, mirroring, and emotional communication, and by creating the appropriate emotional climate the patient needs. Spotnitz also drew attention to another critical factor, and I quote, "In treating an extremely narcissistic individual, it is helpful to operate on the assumption that two-way nonverbal communication goes on from the initial contact without either party necessarily being aware of it. This kind of communication is largely determined by the quality of the analyst's attitude, the kind of attitude that Rory Rothman has brought to the treatment of her patients. Attitude falls in the realm of the intangible unconscious communications that flow from patient to analyst and analyst to patient. It may have to do with the patient's response to the analyst's tone of voice, general demeanor, particular choice of words and how they are uttered, or in the way the analyst and patient greet each other, and all aspects of the patient-analyst interaction. Preoedipal patients are particularly sensitive to what they may perceive visually and orally, AU, and also to what they may project into the analyst, especially because ego boundaries are indistinct. This is understandable if we think of primitive patients being either fixated in or regressed to the earlier stages of life, trapped in the primitive transferences they develop, when they don't yet have mental representations of objects or just starting to development, as in the case of Rothman's patients, May and Jim. Excuse me. In a fascinating document, Hyman Spotnitz prepared for a lecture he was giving at the Stuyvesant Polyclinic in New York, dated October 7, 1964, we find in capsule form the Freud-derived theoretical foundations of his work and the salient features of his thinking articulated by way of questions. So he entitled this paper, which was his draft in preparation for this lecture, Questions to Explore in the Stuyvesant Practicum in the Technique of Psychoanalytic Treatment. Attitudes and experience in applying the economic and dynamic points of view in working with patients. As you see, we are very close to Andre Green, theoretically speaking. The economic point of view is based on the hypothesis that the organism has a given quantity of energy at its disposal, and the distribution of these energies may be decisive as to whether or not certain psychic activities gain access to mobility and consciousness. This is a quote that Spotnitz took from Greenson. Dynamic point of view is based on the proposition that behavior can be understood as the result of the interaction of instinctual impulses and counter-instinctual forces. That is, there's an instinctual impulse and then the defense against it. Fenichel, and these concepts, the economic and the dynamic theory, at the core of modern psychoanalysis, how we think of patients, how we work with patients, how we think of psychopathology, how we do diagnosis. Fenichel, in Problems of Psychoanalytic Technique, wrote in 1941, if we consider once more how instinctual impulses that press toward discharge are in conflict with defensive impulses that prevent discharge, we see that we work always and exclusively on the latter, the defensive impulses. So that was the part that is in bold is something that Spotnitz had heavily underlined in his draft. So we work not on eliciting negativity or aggression, but on the forces that prevent their expression. This is how Rothman worked with her patients. Do you recognize the relevance of these hypotheses in what you observe and experience while working with a patient, and also in what you yourself say and do with them? Rothman used these hypotheses in studying and working with her patients. Now, I'd like to interject here that this paper that he presented was a teaching paper that he gave at the Stuyvesant Polyclinic. And it was addressed to the first generation of modern psychoanalysts, the founders of the center. The center was founded in 1971. If you read in our bulletin who the founders were, well, they were probably all there. Let's see, Arnold, were you at that lecture? So Arnold Bernstein, who is here, was at that lecture. So do you want to tell us something about it?
Not just now.
Not just now. Okay, we'll get him to do it later. Do you employ the concept that treatment is a maturational experience or an organized series of interchanges conducted through interpersonal communication to resolve pathological patterns of energy discharge? Well, this is how Rothman worked with her patients. And I want to make clear that interpersonal exchanges with the patient is not interpersonal theory, or whatever they call that theory. What do the William Allison people call their theory? Interpersonal psychoanalysis? This is not interpersonal psychoanalysis. These are only interpersonal exchanges, which we use, but we don't come from the same theoretical frame. How do you conceptualize the differences between tensions which are within the normal range and tensions which are pathological? Well, this is how we do diagnosis, and of course, the tensions that Rory Rothman was observing were pathological. Would it be useful to distinguish between tensions caused by the individual's appropriate reactions to very forceful stimuli originating in the outside world and tensions produced by defective or inhibited processes of energy transformations and discharge in the organism? This is my emphasis. So this applies perfectly towards understanding and formulating a theory of the psychosomatic problem. Do you apply yourself in treatment with the idea of improving the functioning of the patient at the moment? This refers to working in the here and now, and to Spotnitz' idea, which he told me at a supervisory session, that he always liked the patient to leave the session feeling better than when he came in. The area of our clinical practice having to do with therapeutic attitude is one that Meadow and other modern analysts richly mind. It is contained in the clinical and theoretical writings of all the modern analysts who joined with Spotnitz in developing modern psychoanalysis. It cannot solely be learned from books, however. Modern analysis can only be learned from the emotional experiences gained over a period of many years through one's own analysis, individually and in groups, and the interactions that take place in the modern analytic classrooms and supervisory settings. All combine to help shape modern analysts in the direction of Spotnitz's conception of the therapeutic personality. I would like to conclude by paying tribute to all the modern psychoanalysts who have left us a bountiful heritage through their writings and teachings. Some are no longer with us, and we miss them. Others, I think, are here today. Emlyn Lingner, are you here today? Arnold Bernstein, Murray Sherman, Aviva Sayers, Robert Marshall, Gerald Fishbein, Jacob Kerman, all my friends and colleagues on the center's faculty, and to all of them, I raise my glass in celebration of their accomplishments.